Can a cake be too tall and short at the same time? Meet the Too Tall Strawberry Shortcake.
One company gives a whole new meaning to flour power.
And find out how one family has brought a Scandinavian delicacy to Canada.
But first, it's soft, creamy, and a bit tangy. It's cheese made from goat's milk. It's often called chèvre, from the French for goat. Cover it with cranberries and you have a delicious treat, fit for any cracker.
In 1985, Bruce Vandenberg and his wife bought a farm with the intention of starting a business and raising a family. They never expected to have 2,000 kids.
People that owned this farm before us had milked some goats and made some cheese in the house and had sold some. We had people stopping in the driveway wanting to buy goat's milk cheese, so we started thinking about the business and did a bit of research. And in 1987, we bought 20 goats.
Just 2 years later, they bought a cheese plant and started making chèvre under the brand name Celebrity International.
A soft chèvre, so it's basically a soft cheese made from 100% goat milk.
A goat's diet has a big impact on the flavor of their milk. They start their day with a nutritious breakfast of high-fiber, vegetable-based pellets. Sometimes they munch on their straw bedding, too.
The female goats, known as does, are milked at 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. It takes 2 people about 5 hours to milk all the does. Each milking yields 3,000 liters of milk, for a total of 6,000 liters per day. That's enough to make 790 kilograms of cheese.
The cheese has become so popular that they also have to bring in extra milk because next door, the Mariposa Cheese Factory uses 120,000 liters a week.
When sales really took off in 2004, 2005, we had to start buying milk. And as of now, we buy 80% of our milk from outside sources.
Mariposa receives goat's milk from farms across Ontario, 20,000 liters at a time. It's pumped out of the truck and into a tank at a rate of 1,500 liters per minute.
They need to pasteurize all the milk that enters the facility to kill any bacteria. It's heated to 162 degrees Fahrenheit.
Dan adds enzymes that will thicken the milk over the next 16 hours. Now that it's the correct thickness, the temperature is lowered, otherwise it would continue to solidify. It passes through cooling tubes on its way to the draining room.
Shannon tightly secures bags of cultured milk into the presses. Each press holds 11,000 liters. For 12 hours, liquid whey gets pressed out, leaving a solid curd.
In 1 week, this process will produce 15 metric tons of cheese. The curds are placed into a hopper and taken to a mixer.
The optimal moisture content for goat's cheese is 59%. If it's not quite there, more pasteurized whey is added. Then, just a touch of sea salt.
Once it's portioned into 330-gram logs, things begin to shape up. As 60 pieces come out each minute, Cynthia needs fast hands to keep up. In just 1 hour, Cynthia plucks almost 1,200 kilograms of cheese from the line.
You really have to be good at it. I've tried it. I know Bruce has probably tried it. He's tired. He's fired again.
Once they're shaped, Angela rolls 110 grams of cinnamon-spiced cranberries onto each log.
It's definitely a lot more intricate than what I first envisioned when I figured I'm just going to make a bit of cheese, right? So how hard can it be? How hard is it to roll a cranberry on one piece of cheese?
The same every time.
Every time, every day. So.
Last year, Mariposa used almost 90 million cranberries. The team works quickly to get through today's batch.
The cranberry-coated cheese is vacuum-packed, 35 pieces per minute. Mariposa ship out their cheese to grocery stores and restaurants across North America.
At the end of the day, you're making something that puts smiles on people's faces, and so that part of the business is definitely a lot of fun.
Tasty goat's cheese, ready to take pride of place on any cheese board.
Strawberry shortcake is a classic North American dessert with 3 essential components: strawberries, cream, and cake.
Around 1850, the strawberry shortcake became popular as a celebration of the upcoming summer. I find the two-tall strawberry shortcake is a perfect dessert all year round. It's a summery treat in the summer, but then it reminds you of summer during the winter months, and that's always welcome.
The original cakery has been making products for M&M meat shops for 30 years, and today bake the two-tall strawberry shortcake.
The cakery started in 1979 in Victoria, BC, when friends Kent and Doug decided to open a bakery.
The bakery was a success, and soon after, they opened their Delta plant in Vancouver. Now they have a second plant in London, Ontario. They bake, layer, and package 8,000 M&M meat shops two-tall strawberry shortcakes each day.
It's 3 layers of cake, 2 layers of strawberry mixture, and then 3 layers of whipped cream. So that makes it a two-tall strawberry shortcake.
The first step in making our cakes is the mixing process. Just like you do at home, you gather all the ingredients together, the flour, the eggs, the sugar.
Dave pours in the eggs. They use 500,000 eggs every week. That's like employing more than 83,000 chickens each year.
The dry ingredients are added to the wet ingredients. They include sugar, flour, salt, and leavening agents to make sure the cake rises high. The batter is poured into a tray measuring 16 by 12 inches.
No need to take them off the rack. Rob can just roll them right into this tall oven.
We have 64 cakes on a rack, 6 feet tall. We push them into our ovens, and just like home, we set the temperature, 350 degrees.
1 hour later, the timer has gone off, and the cakes are baked. But when they're hot, they're fragile, so before they can be decorated, they need to cool down.
When they go in the cooling tunnel, it's set at 14 degrees Celsius.
While they cool, Cynthia has time to get the fillings in order. On average, cows will produce 20 liters of milk in a day. It takes almost 2,100 cows to produce enough milk and cream for the original cakery every year.
That's a lot of cows.
The cream is whipped for 15 minutes. There's enough to decorate 112 cakes.
And now, the strawberry filling. Here, they use Grade A Pacific Northwest Totem strawberries, a variety that was developed in Canada in the 1970s, and they're famous for their firm yet juicy texture and deep red color.
375 kilos of strawberries get broken up to make a smoother filling. But there are a few bigger pieces of strawberries still in the mix. Think of them as surprise gems in your stacked cake.
Once our mixers have prepared our whipped cream and our strawberries, we all go to the decorating line.
This is where the cakes get fancy. It takes a team of experts to assemble the cake by hand.
One slab of cake will eventually be cut into 5 cakes, but it's more efficient to work this way, completing the work on 5 cakes in one go.
Each employee has one task so that they can pay extra close attention to detail. Sylvia spreads on the strawberry filling.
Finally, this shortcake gets a height adjustment. For the final touch, some extra creamy whipped cream. Every hour, they bake and assemble 400 cakes.
And the trick to a beautiful slice of cake? Freeze it first. Cakes thaw out incredibly well, so it's okay to freeze them. When they're frozen, they aren't as delicate, so they can get cut into nice, clean pieces without squishing the layers together or making a mess.
The one big cake gets sliced into 5, but it's still big enough to serve 12 people.
If you were to line up all the different varieties of too tall cakes that were sold last year, you'd have over 300 miles of cake. That's nearly the length of Ireland.
So that's a lot of cake.
It is a lot. Last year, over 200,000 strawberry shortcakes were picked up from M&M meat shops across Canada.
When you get it home, you don't have to wait for it to thaw.
My family really enjoys the too tall strawberry shortcake. We actually like it still a little bit frozen. So it's a sort of an ice cream take on the shortcake. I can't get enough cake.
Making the perfect shortcake is one tall order, but this one is just right.
For 11,000 years, humans around the world have been grinding wheat into flour to make bread. So there's been plenty of time to perfect the milling process.
And thanks to the Industrial Revolution, colossal amounts of wheat can be milled without breaking the camel's back.
At Horizon Milling, the daily grind starts with 1,000 metric tons of Canadian wheat.
If you grow over 3,000 acres of wheat on your farm, you'd be considered a very large farmer. We can go through that amount of wheat in 3 days.
And Canada is known for its superior wheat.
Canada is a very significant player in the wheat market globally. We produce approximately 18 to 25 million tons of wheat per year.
The wheat makes its way down the shaft, stopping along the way to get rid of impurities. Different kinds of wheat are blended, depending on what kind of flour is being made.
Wheat falls into 3 classes. There's a hard wheat, which is really good for baking, breads and things of that nature, things that need to rise. Whereas a soft wheat would be good for crackers, cookies, things that don't need to rise as much. And then durum flour, which is very good for pastas.
It's the protein content in the 3 types of wheat that really makes them different from one another. From hard wheat, Creative Baker all-purpose flour is what they're making today.
We have what we call a cleaning house prior to milling. And the cleaning house is such that it's not necessarily a soap and water, obviously, kind of cleaning.
The rigorous cleaning process begins with a giant magnet that draws out any metal. The combi cleaner removes sticks and stones, along with grains that don't belong, like barley, oats, and corn. And air blows away the impurities.
The last thing to do before grinding is tempering to make the wheat kernel less brittle.
We do need to add a little bit of water. It helps us separate the bran from the endosperm being the flour.
It takes just a little water and between 12 to 24 hours of tempering, depending on the wheat's hardness, to make it rubbery. This way, the bran doesn't break up into small pieces and can be sifted out later.
A cyclone rotary valve sucks out any excess air so that when it enters the next stage, it's not blowing all over the place.
Now it's time to grind.
A lot of people still think of milling flour kind of as 2 rocks rubbing together to crush that kernel, and it's a lot more high-tech than that today.
New machines, but the process is the same.
After the first grind, or what they call first break, the wheat goes through successive screens. It gets finer as it falls until it's coarse and fine semolina, which will be further ground and sifted into flour. Air currents separate the bran and semolina particles, sending the bran to a holding tank. The bran will be used to make whole wheat flour, but that's another day.
The fine semolina is now ground even finer with another set of rollers. Now sifted into pure white flour, it gets a healthy dose of vitamins and minerals.
But still federally regulated that we have to enrich all our flour.
So, in goes the regular roster of thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, folic acid, and iron.
Horizon Milling packages their flour in bags of all sizes, from 2 pounds to 50 pounds. In one day, they can produce nearly 1.7 million pounds of flour. That's enough to make over 400,000 loaves of bread.
But that's not all. This pantry essential is used for baking cookies, cakes, muffins, and more.
This Scandinavian and Eastern European delicacy has been eaten since the Middle Ages. To this day, herring remains one of the top 3 most fished species in Europe.
And there's still plenty of fish in the sea.
The stocks are healthy and sustainable. Many grocery stores now are requiring that you use sustainable fish.
Coming from a long line of herring experts, Lorne Krongold grew up in the business and now runs Feature Foods in Ontario, Canada.
The Krongold are herring slingers by heritage, going back to actually our days in Poland in the 1800s when they sold barrels of herring from town to town.
Feature Foods is one of the largest producers of marinated herring in North America.
Sort of in your blood, the fish business.
For over 300 years, salted herring has been transported in barrels, although they used to be wood. One barrel has enough herring to fill 175 jars.
The herring have already been portioned and given a first brine, which is a salty marinade that helps them stay fresh in transit. Kwaku rinses away the brine, and the fish is drained before getting its second layer of flavor.
They go through 15,000 kilos of fish in a day.
You're talking 40, 50,000 fishies in a day.
That's approximately 300,000 wild-caught fish each week.
They call this the cure, or pre-pickle, because just like any pickle, the brine will add flavor as well as shelf life.
You allow your curing solutions, which include vinegar, sugars, special spices. You let it sit in those solutions, and that's why herring is particularly good. It's well suited to absorbing these flavors.
For 2 days, the herring marinates in the pre-pickle.
The traditional jarred herring recipe requires onions. As this is a traditional recipe, they use plenty of them. Up to 3,000 pounds of onions in one day.
Gwendolyn, she's my onion lady. No more tears.
I've worked 15 years, so I get used to it now.
Onions and herring pass along separate conveyors. Both fall into scales measuring out an 80-20 ratio, 80% herring to 20% onions. The 2 ingredients fall together onto a vibrating table that makes it easier for quality control testing.
The women will be looking to making sure there's no objectionable pieces of fish or onions.
Given the all clear, the herring and onions shuffle up to the pocket weigher.
Well, this is our smart machine. Each pocket weighs out a fixed amount, which then it drops down into the shuttle system, which ultimately fills the jar.
The jars are already sterilized. They get a shot of brine, then they're filled with the fish and onions. In one shift, these machines can fill up to 25,000 jars.
Then they go under a metal detector to pass the second stage of quality control. The jars are filled with what's called the cover brine. Keeping everything traditional, there's just a hint of wine in this mix.
It's ceremonial, right? Which means in these vast tanks of brine, there's a few drops of wine.
Every minute, 60 jars get a neckband, heat sealed around the lid. Then 12 jars go into each box.
But before they're sold, they need to spend a little time in the jars.
It needs to spend time in the jar to finish the curing process. That's to absorb all the spices into the fish and get the flavor that we want.
After 1 week, the flavors are perfectly in sync, and it's time to head out to the stores. The herring is sent all over North America, also to Japan and Mexico. Find it in the refrigerated section of grocery stores.
People like to eat herring as an appetizer. Oftentimes they'll mix it with sour cream or mayonnaise, make their own kind of salad or dip.
Perfectly pickled herring from a jar. Must for any Scandinavian smorgasbord.
For more information about the show, please visit foodnetwork.ca.